Hey guys, Bartell's Bookshelf here with my January 2022 wrap up. So, this is going to be kind of an unusual video for me. I had some mental health problems, some issues in January that led to me sort of not being in the best place, mentally speaking. And so I didn't actually read much in January. I only read 2 books in January, which is abysmal for me. But I didn't want to just review 2 books and then just be like, bye. I want to give you guys some substance. So I decided I'm going to do my January wrap up like normal, and then I'm just going to talk about a couple books that I have started recently, and I'll talk about a couple books that I am looking forward to reading, just to kind of keep things interesting. Especially because the first book I read in January was At the Edge of the Universe by Shaun David Hutchinson, which I already did an entire review for, so you can see that here. So there's really nothing more that I can say about this book, but again, I loved it. I thought it was immensely emotional, immensely powerful, just lovely, queer love story with like a sci-fi bent. It was great. Really loved it. I highly recommend that. And again, you can watch my review here. And then the second book I read in January was Mysterious Skin by Scott Heim. Now, this was turned into a film in 2004, which this cover represents, written and directed by Greg Araki, the famous transgressive gay filmmaker, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And I've seen the movie many, many times, and I love it. It's one of my favorite movies, actually. But I'd never read the book, and so I wanted to, I like to do that every once in a while, read the book that a famous movie is based on, just to kind of see how it is, and vice versa. Also, Juan at Plagued by Visions read this last year, and he enjoyed it a lot. So I was like, why not? And yeah, I loved it. It was great. It was. It surprised me how faithful it was to the film. It's a very beautifully told story, but not a happy one. So it focuses on 2 boys, Neal McCormick and Brian Lackey, who both underwent some sexual trauma at a very young age. And basically, the book follows both of these characters as they've gotten older, and sort of the different paths in which they sort of process their trauma or their pain. Neal basically becomes a street hustler, becomes a prostitute, and he sort of clings to sex as like a form of love and connection, of being wanted. And Brian sort of sublimates a lot of these things and is convinced that he was abducted by space aliens, and he becomes obsessed with UFOs and that kind of thing. And they both go down various paths, but then eventually, when they become older, they converge. And essentially the book is about the ways that trauma affects us, mentally, physically, psychologically. It talks about the different forms that trauma can take. So, one of the things that I thought was very interesting about the book and the film is that both boys go down such radically different paths, where Neal becomes almost like hypersexual, almost like a nymphomaniac or something, or satyriasis, I believe, is the male equivalent, just sex obsessed. Whereas Brian becomes almost like asexual. It's almost like he's afraid of it, and he's receded from it in like every aspect of his life. And yeah, it's there's not much to say that hasn't already been said better in Juan's video, especially. But it's very beautifully written. It's a very sort of heightened prose style in a way, which took some getting used to, because these are all supposed to be, sort of like regular Joes from the middle of Kansas or something, So, like, the fact that they all sort of, like, talk very fancy was sort of, like, a little off-putting at first, but then I sort of enjoyed it for that, just because, not only because, it was just beautifully written, but it almost gave it this sort of, like, heightened, not mythical quality, but it sort of had this sort of, like, doomed sort of poetic feeling to it. I don't really know how to put it into words, but it was, yeah, I was surprised. It was a really, really good book. I mean, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised because I enjoyed the movie, and it's very faithful to the movie. There are a few details that are different. There's some scenes that are cut, but the movie's very, very faithful. So if you liked the movie, you'll like the book, and vice versa, I think. But yeah, be forewarned. It's not a happy story, and Scott Heim doesn't shy away from anything. anything. So it's and not only that, but it goes very heavily into sexual trauma, PTSD, depression, suicide, rape. It's a harrowing sort of story of the effects of abuse, and it's very beautifully told. So if you think you can stomach that kind of thing, then I highly recommend it. It was a great book, and the movie's great too. So yeah, go see that as well if you're if you're up for it. So yeah, as I said, we're about 6 minutes into this video, and I've already talked about everything I read for January. So that was why I wanted to talk about a few more books. Just to kind of, give you something interesting. So I was going to talk about 2 books that I just started recently, and just a few random books that I have from the library or that I bought recently that I've had for a long time that I just really want to get to. So yeah, let's start with this is one of the books that I'm currently reading. This is Scythe by Neal Shusterman. Me and my friends Laura and Nakia are reading this for our sort of a reading group book club type thing. It's just us 3, but it's basically a book club. And this was our most recent pick. Laura has been like a reading machine lately and has just been blazing through every book that's been thrown at her lately. So she's already finished this in audiobook form. So but she loved it. She was telling me and Nakia how great it was, and I'm about a quarter of the way through now, and yeah, it is really, really good. So basically, it takes place in this future world where death and disease and everything has been like totally eliminated. And everybody's immortal. Nobody can die. There's people who've been rejuvenated several times, so that they're like hundreds of years old, but they appear just like in their 30s. But basically, the government realizes that in order to keep the population in control and to sort of like keep humanity from stagnating, sort of creatively, spiritually, whatever, that people must die. And so these specially appointed people named Scythes are dispatched to basically... They basically wield the power of death, and they're the only people in society who have the ability to kill. And it's up to them to sort of make decisions on who to kill, how to kill them. They're basically like legalized executioners, and they're sort of treated as like pariahs of society because people are terrified of them, but they're also necessary. And this follows 2 young apprentices to an older Scythe. And just sort of like what happens then. And yeah, I'm only about a quarter of the way through, but it's really, really interesting. It's beautifully written, surprisingly. I guess maybe not, because Neal Shusterman, I think, won or was nominated for a National Book Award. But it's very beautifully written. It's a fascinating concept, sort of giving this great power to these people and sort of deciding like what moral or ethical right do they have to administer death. There's a lot of stuff in the book about sort of the philosophy of death, about why death is necessary, about sort of wielding the power of death, what death means, if anything. It's surprisingly deep and complex, especially for a young adult book. So I've really been enjoying this so far. There's a couple things I'm not sure about yet, but I'm not that far into the book yet, so we'll see how it turns out. But I just love the concept, and that cover is amazing. It's beautifully written, so I'm very excited to see where that goes. And then I just started this last night, I think. This is from the library. This is The Crusades of Cesar Chavez, a biography by Miriam Pawel. So I'm not the most socially conscious person. I don't know a lot of things, especially in regards to like history and social justice and things like that. And I just basically had a sort of thing a few weeks ago where I was just like, man, like, I need to educate myself more. And obviously, being from, living in California, Cesar Chavez is a big part of sort of the history of the state, an important advocate for workers' rights and things like that. But I didn't know anything about the guy. I just heard about him, and again, I have all these sort of blank spots in my knowledge of history and things like and culture, and I don't know. I want to be better. I want to learn more. So I started reading this biography last night. I'm about 30 pages in, I think. I read the first 2 or 3 chapters. And yeah, it's fascinating. The writing itself is a little bit, not dry, it's just kind of like unadorned, at least at this point in the book. I'm still pretty early on. But I've already, it's already really interesting in terms of the way that it talks about sort of the early history of sort of labor unions and things like that. I actually didn't realize that labor unions weren't even a thing during the Great Depression and World War II and all that, which I guess I shouldn't have been surprised by with The Grapes of Wrath, but because I read The Grapes of Wrath and yeah, it wasn't a good time. But yeah, this talks a lot about that similar time period, 30s, 40s, 50s, when migrant workers basically had essentially no legal protection at all, paid shit wages, could barely eke out a living, and of course a big part of that was the Latinx community, Latin American, and the one thing that I thought was interesting that I didn't know about was a lot of migrant workers, often on farms, were forced to use these short 18-inch hoes, where they were forced to bend over to, get at the crops and things, which of course gave them lots of back problems and health issues and things. And apparently this actually this was so notorious that this tool became a symbol of sort of workers' oppression, and it was known as El Gordito, which means I think it means the little one, and I think it's also known as the Devil's Hoe or something like that. It has a lot of nicknames, and I didn't know any of that. So this is why I feel like I have to read this stuff, because I've in 30 pages I've already learned more than I ever knew in school. So nobody taught me about any of this stuff. So yeah, I'm not trying. I don't want to get political or whatever. But it's a fascinating book so far. I'm not that far in, so there's not much else to say. But I'm glad I decided to pick it up and to try and educate myself. So that's the Crusades of Cesar Chavez. And now, just for fun, I'm going to talk about 5 books that I would like to get to sometime soon. That these are my sort of anticipated reads. Not a TBR. I don't want to box myself in like that. But these are just some books that I'm interested in and would like to get to at some point soon. So the first is Birdman by Mo Hayder. This is the Dell edition, not the British edition, which I think most people are familiar with, but I kind of like this one. This is a British crime novel about Detective Jack Caffrey, which is the first part of a series. Mo Hayder unfortunately passed away recently, but Juan over at Plagued by Visions has been a vocal fan and supporter of this book and this author, and on the Discord they just had a buddy read of it recently, and everyone's been just raving about it. I've heard so much how beautifully written it is, how disturbing it is, so I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna buy it despite the book buying ban. So I bought it, and so I'm really looking forward to getting to that at some point. I've heard nothing but good things about it. Everybody seems to just adore this book and this series and this author. I've also got the second book, The Treatment, which again, this is the Dell edition, just because I like these smaller paperbacks. But yeah, so those are the first 2 books in the Jack Caffrey series, which I really look forward to getting to at some point. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to join the hype train with all of you soon. Next is Psycho by Robert Bloch. You'll notice a lot of these are from the library. I get a lot of library books. So this is Psycho by Robert Bloch. There's nothing else that I really need to say. You know Psycho. You know the story. You know. Again, Juan at Plagued by Visions read this recently, just sang its praises, loved it. And as I said earlier, I like reading. It's one of those things where it's like I always want to read the original novels from famous movies just to kind of see how they compare. And this is one that for some reason I had never gotten to. So I was like, screw it, why not? And it's only like 175 pages, so that should be fun. I think I'm going to be buddy reading this with Caleb later in the month. I think we'll see what happens, but so yeah, looking forward to that. It's not long, so hopefully I'll get through it quick. So yeah, that's Psycho by Robert Bloch, another library book here. In sort of my quest to sort of be more aware of things that aren't of just things, and to read more. So part of that is to read more translated literature and literature from people of color. I picked up this. This is Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. I'm not gonna try to pronounce that properly. I'm gonna fuck it up. But yeah, this is a immensely famous Mexican magical realism novel. Apparently it sold like 2 million. There's like 2 million copies in print. It was like massively successful. There was a film made of it, directed by Alfonso Arau. It's just supposed to be. It's like I've heard so much about it, and maybe like I don't know, maybe that's basic to go with like just whatever is like the most popular. But it sounds interesting. It's sort of a magical realism thing, sort of a. As it says on the back here, a tall tale, fairy tale, soap opera romance, Mexican cookbook, and home remedy handbook all rolled into one. So it's sort of a magical realism story about this family and this, and it's sort of like a love story, and there's like food that has like magical properties and stuff like that. And one of the interesting things is each chapter begins with a recipe, which is cool. So that could be fun. I mean, maybe I'll make some recipes from this book whenever I get to it. I believe I've been trying to teach myself Spanish, as Juan knows, so I'm going to embarrass myself. So the original title was Como para agua chocolate? I fucked that up, didn't I? But I actually didn't know this, so I looked up the title, and apparently it's sort of it's like a Mexican slang phrase, because hot chocolate in Mexico is often made with boiling water. So saying that something is like water for chocolate, it's like saying like moth to a flame. It's like you're drawn to it, like you desire it. You desire it immensely. It was made for you, kind of thing. So I thought that was really interesting. So. I don't know. I don't know what Juan thinks of this. I don't know if he's even read this, but like I said, like it's super famous. It's a Mexican novel. Never read it. I want to read more of this kind of stuff. So this is me doing that. So next is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This is a epic tome that was published in 2015. It was a Man Booker Prize finalist. I've heard praise after praise after praise for this book. I've heard people who vehemently hate it. I've heard people who just absolutely adore it. It's got queer characters, queer themes. I've always been wanting to read it. I bought this copy last year in Oregon when we visited Pawel's Books. I've always been wanting to get to it ever since I heard about it, and I keep hearing more and more people talk about it. So at some point, I would like to get through this. It follows 4 college classmates as they move to New York in search of fame and fortune, and it's basically just like about that. And apparently, this book is just like a soul crusher. This is like I've seen so many videos where people do like reading vlogs of this, and they're just like crying by the end of it. So whenever I'm ready for like a sort of a queer tearjerker, I do really, really want to read this. I've heard so many good things about it. And Hanya Yanagihara just came out with a new book, A Paradise, which also has queer themes and also looks really interesting. So if I like this, then maybe I'll check that out. So yeah, there you go. And then finally, on the books that I'm anticipating or looking forward to reading, another library book here. This is Deeplight by Frances Hardinge. Frances Hardinge is a British author, and this is a YA sort of, I would call this a weird fantasy novel. So it takes place in a world where the old gods have died, but pieces of their bodies are sort of like strewn throughout the world, and these pieces are imbued with supernatural powers that can, change and warp people in various strange, disturbing ways. And it's about the story of two friends, 2 boys, who one of whom is very sick, and so one of the boys resolves to get a god's heart and give it to his friend so that he can save his friend from dying. But apparently things get really crazy. It sounds like there's like some mutation involved, some magical sort of like transformation-y like body horror type stuff. There might be queer themes, I think, maybe. So it just sounds really bizarre, really interesting, just fascinating. I love just cuckoo bananas, like dark fantasy stuff like this, Clive Barker-esque type stuff. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. I really hope that's good. So yeah, that's Deeplight by Francis Hardinge. And that is the final book for this video. So yeah, I know, I'm sorry I didn't read as much this month, but hopefully you understand. And but if you have read any of these books, let me know what you think, especially the unread ones. Have you read any of those? Did you like them? What did you think? Talk to me. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. This has been Bartel's Bookshelf, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.